what happens if I were to find more articulation through my feet? How does that change my relationship with earth? How does that then change my relationship with the way I look at the world? How do I then change the relationship with the way I relate to someone else when I'm more grounded, when I feel more centered? And then does that allow more connection? Does that allow more sensitivity, more empathy, more compassion? So, so in a way, somatic yoga therapy kind of brings everything together to look at through them to little things like, okay, I have back pain. What does it then tell me about my lifestyle?
Yeah.
That we can gather a little bit more information about how we want to live our life. Yeah.
So it's almost like it feels like it's delving into a layer of a bit of psychology, psychotherapy in a more physical body-like form. Is that right?
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and sort of
absolutely.
understanding why the body is behaving or acting or speaking a certain way, in a way,
Yeah.
through pains, through whatever it's going through. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Shift with Shubhra. I'm your host, Shubhra Venneti. I'm a certified astrologer as well as an Akashic Records reader and healer, and I am in training to be a hypnotherapist under Marissa Peer's Rapid Transformational Therapy. I have been a sleep consultant for the last 3 years, and I'm transitioning out of a baby sleep consulting as well as baby sign language. And I am transitioning into these new therapy forms instead. So, welcome to the new phase of Shift with Shubhra as well as Shubhra Venneti's career progression. Um, our conversations are basically to do with nourishing the mind, body, and soul. We converse with practitioners on a various topics, usually about their practice. And on today's podcast, we'll be speaking to Daphne Chua. Now, Daphne is a registered yoga therapist. She's also a movement educator, a body worker, and a specialist in somatic therapy. So, we're going to be talking a lot about what is somatic therapy, as well as some of the other things that she's indulged in. Daphne applies principles of kinesiology, somatics, trauma physiology, as well as tantric and yoga philosophy in her work. Through therapeutic processes, she helps people cultivate sensory awareness to inhabit their body and embody the adage of a mind body connection so as to fully experience life. So, Daphne is also trained in the art of traditional Thai yoga massage, biodynamic cranial sacral therapy, Tai Chi massage, and Reiki, as well as Chi Nei Tang, which is an abdominal detox massage. And she infuses all of this into an alchemy of her integrated bodywork offerings and yoga therapy. Daphne incorporates a heart centered approach, the sensibilities of physiology, somatic education, functional anatomy, pain science, as well as the insights into Eastern philosophies and self inquiry within her practice. So, on today's podcast, we're going to talk to Daphne really about her work, her practice, and diving really into what is somatic yoga therapy or what is somatic yoga and how can it help people and who is it for and what shifts can it create for a person. So I'm really excited for you to join us on today's episode, and if you like the content, please don't forget to subscribe. Please share the episode with people that you think might be interested in this kind of work. And also, there are the links below to listen to this episode on audio on various streaming channels, as well as now we have the transcription service. So if you would like to just catch the transcription of this episode, do look into that. That link is also provided. And also of course, Daphne's links as well as my links in case you're interested in our services that we provide. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. So, hi, Daphne. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on Shift with Shubhra. And I think I gave a small, brief intro about you, but obviously, there's so much that you cover. Just listing out the different trainings that you've done and the different techniques that you're applying can probably just give a lot of audience members going, wow, what is this all about? So, perhaps in your words, would you like to maybe talk about what exactly is it that you do and the different therapies you incorporate into it, and maybe a small snapshot of each of those therapies, perhaps?
Okay. Oh wow, that's a very
That's
very long,
it's a big question.
big question
How about we
already.
just start with Daphne? What is it that you do, Daphne?
Well, I am a movement educator, a yoga teacher, um, and I'm also a body worker, therapist of sorts, a somatic therapist of sorts. My business model has changed a little bit, has evolved a little bit in the last year of COVID. I used to do a lot more international teaching, being on the road and offering workshops, trainings, and retreats, and getting people to get more in tune with their body through movement and movement work, and delving into their nervous system. I now have taken this work pretty much 80% now to my home base clinic here in Singapore. So I offer mostly one-on-one work. Of course, I'm still doing the training aspects of things, but it has definitely, the focus in the last year has been much more one-on-one yoga therapy, somatic movement, and body work. So in which I help people to regain functional mobility, as well as work through chronic conditions. Some people do come to me with some PTSD work as well. So mental health, I help people to kind of work with reorganizing their nervous system, regulating their nervous system through the work of movement and touch. And I've been on this journey, I think, since the beginning of 2009. So I would say 12 years and counting, a little bit more. It all started with yoga that really got me into my body connection. I started practicing yoga more than 20 years ago. At first, as kind of like an escape from the corporate craziness. It offered me a sanctuary, and then became something more fitness based as I got more and more into the body asana, flowy contortionist type work. But I've always held a deep interest in more existentialistic inquiries. I guess it's something that I've grown up with. Being my dad has always been a great influence in being able to think for ourselves, and not being a conformist in that sense. So I've always been very interested in the human condition, and really, as I delved deeper into yoga, and then I chanced upon a modality called Feldenkrais, which is a somatic modality, and that's when things really start to move and evolve with along the way. With kind of like every year, I feel like I'm doing something different, and it's been super exciting. It's the air that I breathe and the blood that flows in my veins at the moment. But yeah.
So that last one that you were talking about, what was it called? I'm going to say it wrongly, probably. Feldenkrais?
Feldenkrais. Feldenkrais.
Okay, I'm going to put it in the links below, but tell us a little bit how that then changed the perception of yoga for you. What is it exactly? What did it do?
Feldenkrais is a modality, it's a somatic modality that delves into neuroplasticity. Okay. So in which you instead of focusing on what the end result is, or like what the movement is supposed to achieve, you kind of get into this curious, inquisitive state of mind. It really switches your nervous system to explore the journey rather than focus on what you're going to achieve at the end of it. And I have to give credit to a friend of mine. Her name is Tara Eden. She lives in Chiang Mai, and at that time I was living in Chiang Mai. I went to her class, and I've been practicing yoga for a good while at that time, but it was really when I had this. It was almost like an epiphany. I was like, oh my God, this is. I felt so deeply connected to my body. I felt so deeply connected to something that was just resting really deep within me. So that was the spark. If the Feldenkrais modality is called, there is the movement part called awareness through movement. So basically, you're cultivating awareness through movement. It's as literal as that sounds. And then there is also the body work aspect of it, in which very subtle touches were offered to kind of wake up certain areas, the neuromotor areas in our brain, which has been dormant. The thing about Feldenkrais also is that you do a lot of repetitive movement in order to kind of like every time you repeat a movement, you try to kind of gather new information. It's like, oh, where am I tensing? Am I clenching my jaw? Am I, holding on to my shoulders, or is my stomach tightening? So it's all these little aspects of new discovery that with every repetition, and you gain that, and then that allows the brain to reorganize and go like, do I really need to hold on to this tension? Do I really need to be this rigid? Why can I put in a little bit more effort? Where can I find more ease? So that was really, really interesting for me. But then I also discovered body-mind centering, which is a huge, huge inspiration and influence into what I am actually currently practicing, the work of Bonnie Bainbridge-Cohen. Okay. And in body-mind centering, we rediscover the body as systems, different ecosystems kind of working together. Like the body in itself is a universe, and then you look at how the different systems relate to each other, and also within the systems, every subsystem. So we can look at, for example, our circulatory system, and sense into how is our blood flowing within the arterial blood flow that brings about oxygen, that brings about this metabolic energy, and also the venous blood flow that returns the fluids back to the heart, which is something softer, something slower, something more gentle, something about journeying home. So like these different aspects of uncovering the systems, or like finding out feeling, embodiment of where our lungs are. How do the lungs sit in our body, in the front, in the back, in the sides? So there are 3 lobes on the right, 2 lobes on the left. And instead of thinking of movement as a musculoskeletal, like, okay, we have to flex the biceps, or eccentric contraction to the lats, and all this musculoskeletal way of very linear thinking, we go into more organic expressions and find new ways and new options in which to move to really change the brain, because that requires us to move in a very much of what is arising, coming back into a sense of being, rather than we have to do this, we have to think before we act, which is a very top-down approach. The bottom-up approach offers, from a nervous system standpoint, you actually have to tap into the more of the parasympathetic, to stimulate the vagus nerve. I can talk a lot about that too.
Yeah,
Um,
we probably need to talk about what it is actually, but yes, go
yeah,
on.
yeah. So in which the body itself inform and
Mm.
offers the feedback to our brain.
So why is that
And then
important actually?
we
Because I think that's where people might be starting to get lost in, perhaps. Is why is it that the body needs to lead rather than
uh,
the mind leading?
well, the thing is because we we live in a world whereby everything has become very Newtonian, very linear. I mean, we are sapiens, right? I mean, our evolution has led us to where we are right now. And I'm not kind of discounting the value of top-down approach. I think it's a balance of energy. But I feel that as we shift and morph and evolve as a species, uh, and we have become so developed in our frontal lobe,
Yeah.
so kind of entrenched in our top-down patriarchal systems of like we think before we act, right? And then we do the actions first, and then we kind of get into like, am I feeling this right, wrong, or whatever feelings that is coming through? It has, we think and then acts, and often we don't even get into the feeling, the sensing feeling part of it. So how do we then be a part of the universe, a part of the planet? How can we then develop a relationship with ourselves and others and people around us and our environments if we are all constantly only going top down? Then that it creates this sense of separation, this kind of like there's self and there's always an other. And I think that this belief system, as much a value as it has offered us to grow and progress and be able to function, become really high functioning, we have kind of lost a big part of being human and being a part of the whole. And the bottom up approach of sensing, feeling, and then organizing and acting, and then the thinking comes in, because then you have all the information, then the brain organizes itself so that the doing arises from a sense of being. And to me, I find that this is I'm not saying that this is the only way that the world can function, but I feel like we need to also create this more feminine approach to the way we live our life and the way we are relational beings. That as much as there is self, there is also other, and whatever our actions are has an impact on others. And then this kind of the law of karma becomes not just something like, people talk about karma, it's just like bad karma, or this is, you did something wrong, this is your karma. But karma in the sense of creation, of transformation, of energy shifting and morphing forms through our actions, to then kind of becoming curious about how do we relate to the universe within this microcosm, and then how do we then relate to the universe without, and that we are all part of the whole. As the greatest philosopher thinker in my mind is Albert Einstein, because E equals to mc squared is the theory of relativity. Energy does not create itself, and it doesn't get destroyed. It just shifts and transforms. And I think the work of somatics really help us to embody this the order of nature.
So tell me then, in your practice, when you work with like somatics and when you're using the somatics as a yoga therapy practice, what is it when someone comes to you? Obviously, they're probably coming to you with a variety. It could be different people coming with different issues. What would you say maybe perhaps giving the audience an idea of like if they were dealing with XYZ, how is this particular practice enabling or helping them?
So, for example, just a very common example of someone's coming through my door would be like back pain,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in yoga therapy, so I combine different modalities. I'm also a registered yoga therapist. Yoga therapy offers a framework called the Panchamaya kosha. In Sanskrit, it means that Pancha is 5,
Mm-hmm.
Maya is sheath, like layers,
Mm-hmm.
and kosha is the body. So,
Mm-hmm.
in in yoga philosophy, in one of the Upanishads, it talks about these 5 layers of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the physical layer, or the gross body, that is very visceral, our skin, our muscles, our bones, everything that you can touch and feel and very tangible. And then there is the pranic layer, which is our energy body. So you can tell, someone walks into the room, do you kind of get a sense of like their energetic being? How they, you can look at their color, for example, the skin color, like the brightness in their eyes, how they're carrying themselves. Are they coming in, in a kind of expansive, with kind of this vibe of expansiveness, or a vibe of contraction? Then there is the emotional body, of like the gross emotions. You kind of can get a feel of like where are they, where are they at, in terms of their nervous system. Are they in fight flight? Are they in collapse? Are they disassociative? What kind of issues or challenges are they kind of dealing with their life? Then there is the intellectual layer, which is much more conditioned. So it goes into like cultural belief systems, societal conditioning, who has nurtured us, who are the caregivers in our formative years that form our belief systems. And of course there's the genetic disposition of that, and how that interplays with the way we cognitize the world that we live in. What is right, what is wrong, what are our values, what kind of tribe do we move around in. And then there's the 5th layer, the most subtle layer, and it's called the Ananda Maya, which Ananda means bliss, and I think in the New Age communities, we're all kind of busy trying to bliss ourselves out, but really it just speaks to what really connects us to that sense of belonging, that sense of knowing that we can trust, we can have faith, that we are much greater than just this self. So someone that comes in with back pain, I'm going to go back to that condition. We don't just look at, okay, you're having back pain, because you have a herniated disc. Okay, yes, of course, that's a presenting condition. That's definitely something that can be addressed. And from the physical layer, the physical aspect of it, we can really look at, okay, so L4, L5, there may be a disc herniation. Then we can kind of look at the way that you are, where is your pelvic position, how are you standing, how are you walking, and then delve into like what, like if you're walking with your pelvis tucked under, you don't have a lot of you're not very grounded, then like emotionally, why do you not feel grounded? How can we work together to offer you some kind of grounding? Can we work with grounding through, the way you are touching the earth through your feet? If your toes are all crept up like this, which I see a lot of people who have back pain, their toes are very grippy, or they have bunions, or they're flat-footed, they hyperextend their knees. So that changes the relationship in which they move into gravity and space. So that gets you into a sense of brace. If you're gripping, you're bracing. So what are you bracing? Why are you bracing? And then, just getting them back in touch with their body through that awareness. Oh, actually, I am, gripping my toes. Do I need to do that? What happens if I were to find more articulation through my feet? How does that change my relationship with Earth? How does that then change my relationship with the way I look at the world? How do I then change the relationship with the way I relate to someone else when I'm more grounded, when I feel more centered? And then does that allow more connection? Does that allow more sensitivity, more empathy, more compassion? So in a way, somatic yoga therapy kind of brings everything together to look at through them to little things like, okay, I have back pain. What does it then tell me about my lifestyle?
Yeah.
That we can gather a little bit more information about how we want to live our life. Yeah.
So it's almost like it feels like it's delving into a layer of a bit of psychology, psychotherapy in a more physical body-like form. Is that right?
Yeah,
and sort
absolutely.
of understanding why the body is behaving or acting or speaking a certain way, in a way, through pains, through whatever it's going through. So this could be, for just for information's sake, but this could also be for illnesses, presumably. Not just physical conditions such as musculoskeletal pains and stuff, but also physical illnesses. What types of illnesses have you worked with this therapy form?
But the thing is that they're never separate. You don't just come in with a back pain without maybe having some sort of digestive issues or irritable bowel syndrome.
Because they're all at that lower back area as well, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or some sort of kind of like maybe an autoimmune condition like fibromyalgia, which, well, another whole podcast we can talk about fibromyalgia. Like, is it real? Is it in the head? Or especially with women who deals a lot with like erratic cycles or pelvic pain. So it's never one thing without the other. So if we're talking about conditions, so like digestive issues, generally, if you have digestive issues, that means you're generally you suffer from bloating. And if you're bloated, your back is going to be pulled quite tightly. Your spine is going to be in a bit of tightness there. So, and then we can look at if you're constantly, you have your belly is bloated and you're being pulled into into the front of your body, then your back body is contracting. So how do we then open up the back body so that you can rest and find your back body? So look at more, how do you rest in the back again? So we can look at connective tissues, and because connective tissue through the fascial matrix that interweaves into all the muscles and the organs and our blood vessel and our nerves, then we can then create more of like, where can we open up the back body more? Can we work through the lungs? Can we work through maybe the hip flexors, so that your hip flexors are not, your quadriceps are not constantly contracting and you are pushing your knees back, and that pushes your body forward as if you're going to topple over if someone pushes you. So you have lost that grounding just because of digestive issues. And then how do that relate to your nervous system? If you're constantly in a state of brace, you must be in a state of kind of like hypervigilance. If you don't feel very stable, your belly is being pulled forward, you can feel very stable, then where are you at in your nervous system? So how can we work with the nervous system to calm you down, to regulate you back into a rest and digest mode? So a framework that I often use is the study of the polyvagal theory, coming back to the vagus nerve, that's developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. Look at the ladder, the polyvagal ladder, of which where we are at in terms of our nervous system. Are we in activation mode? Are we in a free state? Are we in a disassociative state? Are we in a collapsed state? And his study through this polyvagal theory also kind of brought about the evolution of the human nervous system of the human species, as well as the mammalian species, to kind of bring us back to where we are today as we develop our nervous system from the most primitive instinct of survival to the highly evolved state of engagement and connection. And which is very much inherent in our human nature. We want to connect, we want to engage, we want to care for others. We will bond and defend our tribe, our loved ones, our young ones. So, and it is through the vagus nerve that really that communication, or now there's a word called interoception, of sensing and feeling what is happening in our internal landscape, bringing that feedback to our afferent nerve, to the nerve that travels back to the brain stem, that communicates, okay, where are we at this very moment? How are you feeling? What is your breath like? Can you feel your heartbeat? Is your heart beating fast? Am I engaging with you through my eye contact? What is the tone of my voice? So intonation rather than information. Our intonation conveys a lot more of how our state of being, rather than actually what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think this framework, it has been such an extraordinary way of bringing therapy into the forefront of not just like, okay, tell me what your symptoms are, and then this is what you should do, which is a very top-down approach. The polyvagal framework really brings it back into like, how are you feeling? What is your relationship with yourself and with the world, or with your belly, for example, and bring everything into context, and gives you just this beautiful balance between like our top-down approach of kind of knowing and doing and using the information we have, and this bottom-up approach of sensing, feeling, and then organizing information. So if we're looking at a disease, or we're looking at an illness, but even a palliative condition, so someone who is a cancer patient, how do we then help to regulate their nervous system, knowing where maybe it's a stage 4, maybe it could be a stage 1, but then it's not so much about which stage, but how do we regulate their relationship with their condition, their body, and we work in that aspect. So it's not so much of a cognitive behavioral therapy, which is common and much more mainstream. This is really working through the body to change our brain, and because the body is our brain. I feel that this aspect is still pretty, I don't want to say it's pretty new, but it's still a little bit counterculture, in the sense that we love top-down stuff, right? We love to be able to label things and organize things and put them into boxes and know. We want everything to be known. If you have this, this is the solution. You have that. That's the solution. That's why we have a lot of quick fixes. We have a lot of pills that we pop, a lot of supplements, a lot of fancy gadgets. But this work is much more. You can't be lazy.
So then, is it safe? Is it probably right to say that, it's definitely not necessarily like a one session type of thing for, like, depending obviously on the issue that you're coming, what's the grade of the issue, the intensity, how long it is it chronic, is it acute, um is it related to is it related to other things, so is it more complex rather than just the one thing, that it's going into something like somatic yoga therapy is probably not a one-stop solution, like, oh, I just go for one session and then that's it, I'm fixed and cured miraculously.
Yeah, it's definitely not a one session thing, but I believe that the one session, even one session can uncover, like you can uncover so many things. If you're just like, oh my god, I have been, holding tension for the last, I don't know, X number of years, by through my pelvic floor, or I've been kind of clenching my fists, or there are some retained reflexes that have not been integrated since birth. And and I think, like, usually in the first session we don't even go that deep into, like, what is actually your deepest darkest secrets. Although I love to kind of delve into the aspects of things, but there's a lot of titration involved into, like, every, we see what's showing up, and then let's say if you come once a week, we see what's showing up for you every week, and don't look at it as a linear path. It's not like, okay, you're going to be cured and you're going to be good as new, but kind of like become curious of your own journey and start to create that self-agency in, like, hey, I know that nothing is actually permanent, the sense of impermanence, that everything is, the only constant is change. But I know that if I can manage my diet, for example, or if I can create a little bit more articulation through my feet, or I have a little bit more hip mobility, I won't have to suffer through so much pain, or I can move with more ease. And if I can move with more ease, I have more capacity, I am more resourced to face the world. So I think, like, there are people who come for one session, and I do offer one session, one-off body work, in which kind of, I call it like a tune-up, in which I try to kind of align the different systems, and get get the spinal alignment back online, and put the head back into position. And of course, I think one session you can feel quite a lot of difference from when you come in to when you leave my office, but very much of this work is really informing our nervous system, what is possible, what are the possibilities. And I often tell my clients, like, just tune into when does the little niggles come in again, when do you get triggered again, when do you start bracing again, and how much integration time do you allow yourself to notice that, because it can come back the next day.
Yeah,
right. I'm not a fixer. It can come back the next day if something traumatic happens, or if you're so trigger happy that easily you go back home and your kids misbehave, and you're back in that. So it really depends, because, as I said, this work requires a lot of self-agency. It gives you self-agency, which means that you have to also do the work. And the work that you have to do is the awareness that you afford yourself, the time in which you allow for integration and resourcing. Um, if you come in to expect to be fixed, and I don't want to do the work, just come and fix me, then it will always just serve as a fix. It's really how you want to, where do you want to take it, and how far do you want to take it.
Would you be able to share some stories of some client stories, maybe on like who you've worked with and what they've gotten out of this from when they first saw you to towards the end of your work with them?
Yeah, I guess I could share a story of maybe like a high power corporate executive who came in to see me because of fatigue and back pain.
Fatigue and back pain.
Yeah, and yeah, he was one of my first. He is still my client. I was one of my first clients since the reopening of phase 2, and he came in he was in quite a pretty bad shape. Like you could see that there was so much bracing in his body, like his lower back and ribs was so tight, and there was like his eyes was just like spelling off like I need to sleep and for a long time. and I think within the first session, we kind of were able to realign his spine a little bit and get him to feel the possibility of a body that is not constantly bracing, a body that is in touch with gravity. Then he realized, I guess, through the last year, and we're still working together, that because he hasn't traveled, he was able to commit himself to doing this work. He is able to, he's now able to find at least 10 minutes whenever there's space in his schedule to stretch and to be in touch with his body. He is now realizing how his before how this chronic fatigue and chronic stress was affecting the way he was relating to his staff and his family. And I mean, I'm not saying that he's a perfect being, he's fully enlightened, but because of these little realizations in the work that we do together, and the fact that COVID's blessing is that people are grounded in one place and is able to and see the importance of some sort of discipline and routine, and the discipline of also creating time for your self-resourcing and time for time to be with your body, time to give yourself a little bit of bottom-up moments of sensing and feeling and moving. That realization of how disconnected, disembodied we were, even that realization moves and shifts things around, and he's now in a new role, in a new job, a better one, a much more a higher paying one, according. And like he still moves through life with as life does, with its own set of challenges, but he's now actually stopped or cut down a lot of alcohol intake. He's cut down. He's really much more mindful about his diet. He is in a very healthy relationship with his partner, and I don't know. I always tell my friends, like, oh, he came in looking a mess, and now he's actually a really attractive, charismatic man. So yeah, I do see these changes. It's I think like if there was a before and after, the difference will be quite apparent. but that is only also because he has put in the work. So it's a collaboration.
Yeah. I mean, so then in terms of like what type of clients do you like to see, or like what is the kind of work that you love doing when you're doing this type of work? Who are you looking for to help or work with?
It's funny because many people ask me that question, like, who's your target audience? And I honestly don't really have an answer for that, because I think I'm happy to work with anybody that wants. I think it's more the other. I should flip the question around. It's more like whether you are ready to come back to yourself, come back to your sense of self, your sense of being. So I have I've worked with babies. I've worked with children. I have worked with 90-plus-year-old people. I have worked with corporate execs. I have worked with the dishwasher. Like someone who cleans the table at a hawker center. So it really, I don't know really how to kind of categorize it. It's.
Is there any limitation on this? Like, who can you not work with, perhaps? Is there any?
I guess myself. It's like trying to tickle yourself, right? I mean, I have my own practice, my self-care, but sometimes it is challenging when you have to kind of like you deal with all this work, and then you come back to yourself and go like, so how do I then be my own healer? Yeah.
But in terms of like, you obviously work. That means you work with pregnant women, you work with children, you work with seniors, male, female, no difference. There is no illness or physical impairment or any intellectual disability, perhaps even that prevents a person from getting this work done for them.
Yeah.
So it's really open to every person.
I feel, and that's the universality of versatility of this work, because we all have the human condition, right? And we are all relational beings, so it's all about just kind of bringing that perspective of relationships back into our cognitive mind, right? Hey, we are relational. I have a relationship with my hand. I have a relationship with my thumb. You know, and creating and because it's relational, then there is kind of a separation, not a separation to it, to be able to kind of see things as they are, to understand ourselves with a little bit more care, compassion. And we all need that. I mean, so that's why I can't really say if there's a certain type of audience that I prefer. Actually, I really love people who walked in with that's not into yoga, not into anything new agey, not into any of this like philosophical existentialistic stuff. They just come in and fix my back pain, just because I see that as like real potential of like how then we can really how deep can we go, because I think that every single person has that capacity.
Yeah. And so then what's the shift that you'd like to create with the work that you're doing then? I mean, you've kind of covered it a lot, I think, but like if you could summarize it.
The shift is really just getting people to feel, and I think like being able to step into the feeling realm instead of just the thinking mind is huge. So if people were to ask me what I do, I often say that I teach people how to feel. Yeah, and at the moment I am hoping to shift my work more into teaching again, going back
Mm-hmm.
into to teaching, and being able to share my my clinical experience through working so intensely the last COVID year, and being 12 years in this work, to share that experience and knowledge that I have, and create more shifts on a slightly more ambitious scale.
Mm.
And yeah, just going back into offering this work through the form of education, and definitely hoping to target, and going back to target audience, to target more um, practitioners in the field who are holding space for people. So
Mm.
someone like yourself, healthcare workers, mental health workers, yoga teachers, movement educator, fitness practitioners, to understand a little bit more about the mind body aspect and how we can create this shift uh, together as and look at everybody, and I mean body in the literal sense and in the metaphorical holistic sense, as a human being who suffers, who suffers the human condition, and especially in the healthcare sector, in more allopathic Western medical fields, whereby drugs were prescribed, and everything is specialized. Okay, you have back pain, you go to a spine specialist, orthopedic. You have feet problems, you go to a podiatrist. You have kidney issues, you see a renal specialist, where everything is so specialized. But then how do we come back to not seeing someone as the symptom, but as a
Mm.
whole being?
Mm.
And then learning to be trauma sensitive, like in terms of our communication, in terms of the way we relate. How do we communicate with more empathy, more sensitivity, and more care?
Mm.
I feel that that is a little lacking at the moment, and with COVID highlighting so much on the mental health aspects of people, of the way we live the new normal. Um,
Mm.
I think it's really imperative that we try to really be more be more empathetic, be more
Mm.
compassionate, in which the way we provide care and therapy uh, to 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 our patients, to our clients, to our students, to people who come through the door, that is in a body or
Mm.
with a mind. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I mean, just speaking from my own experience, I think, when I've worked with Daphne and I'm still working with Daphne, it's just been really like, it's sometimes really hard to talk about like how it works because it's working on so many levels. It is a very manual based type of therapy, but at the same time it's not so manual based therapy, if that makes sense. Like it's not like you're deeply massaging me to the point of excruciating pain. That's not, it's manual in a different way because you manipulate my body, but you don't like, push the living life out of me with your hands. um but it's incredibly relaxing at the same time. It's so interesting to feel your whole body finally come together. It's all, especially I think in my case, where it feels like every part of my body is off on its own sort of journey. Like my head is there, my shoulders are there, my pelvis is there, my legs are here, and then I come to Daphne and then she goes, okay, now you're like one body and you're all working together and you're all touching the ground now at the same time. um and so if you are anything like me and you feel a little bit like parts of you are in different spaces, then perhaps seeing Daphne for a session would be great. Of course, as she said, she works with people with, who have multiple, who may have different illnesses from autoimmune to physical, just physical issues like pain. but also children and those with, special requirements and needs and things like that as well. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank Daphne for coming on Shift with Shubhra and explaining about her practice. We will be putting her details down in the notes below. So thank you so much, Daphne, for coming on.
Thank you, Shubhra.